Donald Trump stunned world leaders at the United Nations General Assembly, speaking for the first time in 6 years and using the world stage to deliver a blistering attack on the institution, allies, and humanity. In his speech delivered on the UN's 80th anniversary, he painted the body as corrupt, ineffective, and hostile towards national sovereignty. Trump urged governments to follow his brand of hardline, far-right nationalism, denouncing the UN as an engine of globalization that, in his view, undermines Western nations. Trump demanded the closure of borders and the expulsion of migrants, warning leaders that their countries were being destroyed by immigration policies. He accused the UN of bankrolling mass migration, alleging that its aid programs provided food, shelter, and even debit cards to enable immigrants' journeys. "It's time to end the failed experiment of open borders," he declared. "Your countries are going to hell." European nations were a primary target. Trump charged them with erasing their heritage and bowing to political correctness. He framed migration as an existential threat, telling them that if they failed to stop people you have nothing in common with, their nations would collapse. He mocked green energy initiatives as a plot, claiming that renewable energy had left Western nations on the brink of destruction. The speech also veered into racially and religiously charged territory. He singled out Sadiq Khan, London's Muslim mayor, describing him as terrible, and falsely accused the city of drifting towards Sharia law. He described Europe as being devastated by what he called a double-headed monster of immigration and energy policy. His language echoed blood and soil nationalism, urging leaders to defend identity and borders at all costs. Trump portrayed himself as a man of action, in contrast to what he mocked as the UN's weakness. He derided the organization for issuing empty words and strongly worded letters instead of solving wars, boasting that he had ended 7 conflicts during his short tenure in office. But much of his claims were riddled with distortions and outright lies. He praised El Salvador for jailing deported Venezuelans he labeled as dangerous criminals, though independent investigations revealed that nearly 90% had no criminal record in the United States. His insistence that he had ended 7 wars was also debunked, with analysts pointing out that most conflicts he referenced remained unresolved or have since reignited. His description of Europe as running open borders ignored the fact that EU nations maintain strict external controls, while Britain has introduced a points-based system of immigration. On Ukraine, Trump exaggerated Europe's dependence on Russian oil and gas, overlooking the EU's sharp reduction in imports and its plan to phase them out entirely by 2027. And his dismissal of climate change as a con job ran counter to overwhelming scientific consensus that human activity is driving global warming, with renewable energy already reducing emissions worldwide and producing thousands of jobs. Turning to geopolitics, Trump criticized Europe for continuing to purchase Russian energy, saying NATO members were funding the war against themselves. He proposed sweeping tariffs on Moscow as leverage to end its invasion of Ukraine, but implied that responsibility for negotiating peace should rest with European governments rather than the US. Critics saw this as yet another step away from American leadership on the subject of Ukraine and a pivot towards the support of Vladimir Putin. On the Middle East, Trump offered only passing remarks about the recognition of Palestine by several allies, condemning it as a reward for Hamas after the October 7 attacks. He suggested that recognizing a Palestinian state would embolden terrorism while hostages remained captive. At the same time, speculation grew that Trump might consider recognizing Israeli settlements in the West Bank as retaliation. Trump also returned to familiar trade grievances. He claimed nations that obeyed global trade rules had seen their factories gutted, while rule breakers prospered. He pledged new efforts to prevent nuclear and biological weapons from spreading, warning that their use could bring about the end of civilization itself. The only nation Trump praised outright was El Salvador, crediting it with helping detain immigrants he described as criminals. His administration has previously funded the country to house deported Venezuelans. By the close of his speech, Trump had turned his fury squarely on the United Nations and the leaders before him, branding them as the very globalists he claims are driving the world to ruin. The spectacle was designed for his base, who will cheer the theatricality of him ridiculing European liberals and international institutions. But for the leaders in the hall, it was a moment of quiet humiliation, forced to sit through his tirade and offer restrained applause while their nations were denounced as weak, mismanaged, and complicit in decline. Trump attempted to paint a picture of American prosperity, boasting that the United States was doing better than ever under his leadership. That claim, however, is difficult to reconcile with economic realities. Inflation has strained households, federal debt has reached historic highs, and wages have failed to keep pace with rising costs. Growth remains sluggish, and manufacturing jobs, central to Trump's rhetoric, continue to face structural decline. His rosy portrayal of the economy stood in stark contrast to the pressures felt by ordinary Americans, revealing the gap between his self-congratulation and the reality of the challenges still confronting the country. I'm Anthony Davis. You can find me on the 5 Minute News YouTube channel and podcast, on Wednesdays co-hosting Uncovered, and on Sunday on The Weekend Show with MeidasTouch.
Love this video? Support independent media and unlock exclusive content, ad-free videos, and custom emojis by becoming a paid member of our YouTube channel today. You can also gift memberships to others. Let's keep growing together.